Hello! Hi, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us for the first ever Magical Girl Society live discussion. This month we're discussing the October book pick, which is The Bone Witch. I'm so excited to chat with all of you about what you thought of the book. But before we dive into that, I figured we could start off with some introductions. So hello, I'm Monica. You're here on my channel where I talk about books for the most part. And yeah, I'll hand it over.
I'm Breana. I normally talk about books and K-pop, and I read a lot of Asian fantasy, and I was really excited about the book because it's Shealea's favorite book, and Shealea is our special guest today.
Hi everyone, so I'm Shealea. I don't have my own booktube channel. I do have a blog though where I talk about books and sometimes media. They're right, The Bone Witch is my favorite book, and it's what inspired me to start reading more diversely. So I'm very excited to share about the things that I love about it and the things that I notice about it that made me realize that, I should be reading more diverse books, more Asian-inspired fantasy and such.
I love that. I'm so glad you could join us today.
Yes. I'm so excited.
So to kick off the discussion, I thought we could just start with some sort of a quick overview of what we generally thought of the book, our favorite parts, least favorite parts, things like that. And so, Breana, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. Should I give a quick summary of what the book is, or?
Yeah, well, I feel like everyone here probably has read it. If you haven't read it, though, pre-warning that we are going to be giving spoilers for this book. So if you haven't read this and you want to, you probably should not stay.
You have like a spoiler sign, but anyway.
Oh yeah, spoiler sign. Well, I don't know. I haven't rated it yet. I've left it on my Goodreads currently reading because I'm not sure. I feel like I know a lot of people told me before going in that this book feels a lot more like a prequel in terms of world building and introducing characters. So I knew that going in. So I feel like right now, I think based off of just this book alone, it's maybe like a 4-star for me. But I think depending on what I think of the second and third books, it could be a 5-star based on where the story goes. Because where it ended here, I felt. And I was indifferent towards it. But I'm very interested in the world building. That was my favorite part personally. And I really liked the beginning of each chapter, like the flash forward portions that kept me really interested. And I think that's part of why I'm not sure how to feel about it, because like at the end the flash forwards didn't meet up with where we were in the story. So I felt a little lost. But I think it's really exciting.
One person commented saying that you sound really quiet for them. You sound okay for me, though. I don't know if anyone else. Just let us know in the comments if there's any audio issues or anything. But yeah, I agree. I'm on the same wavelength. When I first started it and it was like it flipped, they introduced the whole bard element. I was like, oh, this kind of reminds me of Kingkiller, which I shamefully must admit I don't actually like very much, which I know is like just me and my horrible taste.
No.
So I didn't love Kingkiller very much, but I think for me I liked this one a bit more. I found the main character to be more compelling for me personally, and I was really excited to have that kind of structure because that was one of the things I did like the most about it, was this sort of like playing with time, because throughout it I wasn't sure, like by the end I thought like for sure it was going to like line up and we'd understand how she got here, but you don't, and I liked that, even though it also like frustrated me. But I think overall I liked the book, but I could see myself loving the series as a whole and eventually loving this book when I come back to it, is kind of where I'm at. But I'm really excited to hear your thoughts, Shealea.
Okay, so for me, I think I've read this 3 or 4 times. I reread whenever I pick up the sequel just so that I can, because it's a lot. Actually, the world building is a lot. It's very intricate, very detailed, and so I feel like every read I pick up something that I didn't notice before. So I really like that about it. I always refer to this as the book that started it all because this is really what changed my whole life. It made me realize that because it came at a time where I was being what I felt bored by all the YA fantasy books I was reading because they felt very formulaic. They felt very like, oh, it's just like the same thing over and over again. But this one sort of just broke those things for me. First, it's told in a really non-linear way, right? It goes past forward. And then that really intrigued me about it. I also felt connected to Tia in a way that I couldn't really explain why. I think it's because she's like this really young girl who's sort of forced to grow up and she doesn't really know what she signed up for. So throughout the book, um, you can sort of see how she gets disillusioned by like by her environment and like the role that she's supposed to take. And I can you can and basically she just ends up being a really angry girl, and I could relate to that. I'm an angry girl. I'm angry at society. I want to see people the elite fall. So that's really, I think she's very compelling. um and yeah, this book is my favorite because it really made me think. I think it's not the perfect book, but it is a good book to make you question what you enjoy about fantasy, what you enjoy about writing, and what kind of storytelling you're used to.
I agree about Tia though. I feel like what I really like about this book in particular is it made me realize that I like anti-heroes.
Right. And she's very complex. Like, people think she's bad, but then you're kind of rooting for her though. So I don't know, I love her so much.
Yeah, I also completely agree with what you were saying about how like it breaks the mold of sort of what I feel is sort of like the standard plot style within YA fantasy, and this was very different from that. And I think that's what I really liked about it, is that it was so unique in the way that it was telling the story. So I guess, do we want to talk a little bit about that narration style? So we have between each of the chapters the sort of like flip to the bard, and that was like both one of my favorite parts about the book, and also something that by the end I was like, wait, what? But overall, I really liked that, and I felt like one of the biggest like plot reveals was done through that style of pacing. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you thought about that like very sort of specific narration style that this book had.
For me, it was very interesting because like the book starts off with the present, right? And then basically throughout the book, you're trying to figure out what led to Taya being exiled, what led to her like being this person that she's like ostracized by everyone else. And so you're kind of like, I don't know, for me, like if you're really in the mood to like look for details or any foreshadowing, like this is really a good book because like when as you read it, you're sort of looking for hints, trying to tell you what happens like later on. So it's both frustrating, but at the same time, it really challenges you. And I think like the writing style is like the narration is so amazing. Like it really, I don't know, like I can't imagine this book being written in a different way and for it to be as impactful as it is like how it's been written. So yeah.
I agree. I feel like because this book had so much of the world building, like the buildup of how Tia, because they say Tia in the audiobook, but like I don't know. But
Oh,
yeah, I'm not sure. You're friends with the author, so you tell me.
as far as I know, they pronounce it as Taya whenever we talk about it. So I remember that.
I'll say Taya then. So I feel like without the bard part of the narration, I think the story might not have flowed or been as enticing because you are invested in her journey as a really young girl based on the fact that you know something terrible or extreme happens in between these events. Then you're getting to build up and then you become excited for it. And I feel like without those beginning chapters, it would have just been not dry per se, but like you would have felt like, what was I reading for at the end? So I think the Bard's chapters, not the chapter, the Bard's parts were like I think the most important part of the narration style.
Yeah, I agree, especially because like you see that darkness, especially like at the for really all of the book. Like she is very like kind and nice, and like she doesn't have that sort of darkness at all to her. And then seeing that manifest through those barred chapters, it's like, who is this girl? Like, what happened to her? And so then like you just keep reading and you want to know what happens next. Also, throwing this out there for anyone following along, if you have any thoughts about what we're talking about, feel free to put them in the chat, and we'd love to have you be part of the discussion also. I just want to make sure I throw that out there. But yeah, I also really liked that style. I feel like probably one of the most important things to talk about is the actual magic system and the Asha. The Asha or the Asha?
Asha? Is it Asha? Not
Asha?
But
yeah. But I think Shealea, you had some thoughts you wanted to talk about when it came to like the building of the Asha.
Actually, like when I first read this book, it was for the blog tour for the Heart Forger. So I was actually lucky enough to like read the first two books in like one sit, not really one sitting, but like there's no like, oh no, it really feel like a cliffhanger because I could dive into like the next book right away. But anyway, in that blog tour, I was able to interview Rin Chupeco, and at the time, I didn't know that she was a Filipino author. So I was just like asking about like the general stuff, like what inspired the world building, blah 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 blah, and that's when I learned that the idea of the Bone Witch particularly is loosely inspired from the Filipino mangkukulam. So basically, it's sort of witch figure here in Filipino like folklore, and they sort of have the same dynamic as bone witches, where people go for them to get things, but they're also like ostracized from society because they're like, oh, they're considered bad luck, or they're considered as bad omens, and they basically have a bad reputation, but people are reliant on them for spells or for like to chase away like I don't know ghosts or something. So it was interesting. So like when they told me that, I was like, oh my god, everything just sort of clicked for me at the moment. Like because when I was reading it, I only took note of, for example, like the geisha like elements, right? Like I knew it was Asian inspired and it grew like from a lot of things, but I didn't really realize just how much, like how many cultures like it draws from until like that interview. And yeah, and the magic system was like interesting because it's elemental, but also not really. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. That's so
Yeah.
cool that you got to interview. Ren.
I think, aren't you in the acknowledgements of one of your books?
Oh no, that's for like the Never Tilting World. Like, unfortunately, we weren't close back then. That was like I didn't know who they were, and I just like, yeah.
Sorry. Amazing. But yeah, I agree. I thought the world of the Asha was so interesting, and it wasn't something I was expecting going into this. As soon as you sort of like enter that world and you get this whole like political system just like within the world of the Asha, I felt like, and just like the way that all the relationships grew over the plot over the course of the book, I thought was so interesting, and all the different sort of like expectations around like how you're supposed to behave and how you're supposed to like perform and all of these standards that they had. That was something that I really liked about that, and the fact that it went so in depth with that, which I think like so much of this book is world building, which for me, like reading it the first time, I was like, okay, I want it was like a lot of world building, but I could see like in future books that giving me a really good foundation for like what's to come. But yeah, I thought that whole world was just like really fascinating, and also that take on sort of like the culture of geisha, I thought was to see that in a fantasy and to see it done by an Asian author was really good, because I feel like I, for the most part, have really only seen that depicted by non-Asian authors, which is not always the greatest depiction.
Yeah, it's always a little funky, right? I feel like where you're coming. Yeah.
Yeah. I even saw like one review that was like, oh, it's like a copy of Memoirs of a Geisha. And I'm like,
Please stop like that.
please no. Let me see. Oh, yeah, we got a couple. So we have this one. I also thought this too at one point in the book. Namesake tea as in the drink. And I was like, oh, I don't know. Taya, tea, I don't know. But also I love this. Hello, Tiffany.
Yes, I am the biggest Chipek hoe. I am a hoe for Rin Chipeko. So, and I was like, so I mean, like when I started calling myself a Chipek hoe, I did not expect it to get to Rin for her to see it, but eventually they did, and I remember like messaging them and saying, oh my god, I'm so sorry, because at this point we had already met, we had coffee together, I've been to their events, so we were like sort of friends, and I was like, oh, is this weird that I'm basically a hoe for you, but but they were very gracious about it. They were very like, they found the whole thing funny, and then so I just kind of like, that gave me like the courage to like encourage everyone else to be a Chipeko.
I love
but
that.
yeah,
I'm gonna have to use that.
I really hope
this comment from Trishu.
Yeah. Hi Trish. Oh my god, you woke up for me. Thank you so much. I had a hard time waking up today.
Oh no, I feel that.
Because it's like cold now. So when you wake up, right, and it's like cold outside and you just want to like stay in forever, it's kind of what it is now.
Oh yeah, I saw this comparison to Grisha. And, I think that Grisha takes a lot of tropes from fantasy. Like I see a lot of things compared to Grisha. And I think it's because Grisha does a lot of like sort of standard fantasy tropes that I also think that this book does also play with. But I think that's probably why I really like the world of both of those books. I don't know if I'd compare it so much to Grisha because it did feel like very different, for me at least.
Just to add to like the idea of trope, I think one of the tropes within the magic system that I really appreciated was that idea that magic doesn't make you all powerful. Mm-hmm. Like we see like Taya is like, like supposedly one of like the strongest like bone witches like they've seen in a while, and we see that the bone witches, like despite their power, because of the stigma attached to them and because of like the structure of everything else, they're actually vulnerable, right, to being exploited, to being like and they're hated by everyone else. So I like the idea that magic doesn't guarantee that you are like you're powerful and that you can like do whatever you want. And yeah,
I agree. I didn't think about that until just now, but the stakes I think that she set for, magic didn't come and like fix everything for her, even though it gave her brother back. It actually made her life a lot more difficult in a lot of ways. I mean, clearly. And also, yeah, I like that there were boundaries for magic. Like even you see like with Michaela and how the toll that doing all the things that the society expects of her has taken, which I guess is a good segue into talking about Lady Michaela and her Heart's Glass, which I thought was like, just like really, I really liked that mystery leading into that. And I'm also super interested to see how that continues. Like I was very intrigued about the fact that like the prince king that she fell in love with like wouldn't come back and wouldn't reveal where the Heartstone was. And so I'm interested to see like where Michaela's journey takes her, and I have a feeling it's not going to be a happy place, and that might bring some tears for me because I really liked Michaela's character. But yeah. Also,
I just want to address like the one comment about Rinchipeka's pronouns.
Okay.
So so just so everyone knows, like they're non-binary, but as far as I know, or at least like when we talk, like they prefer they them pronouns, but occasionally they do use she her. But I'm still trying to I try to keep that in mind, but it's kind of hard since we've known each other for a long time, and I sort of go back to old patterns. So please just call me out a little bit whenever I sort of slip up. But as far as I know, they're comfortable with both, but prefer they them.
Yeah, I think you've used they them pretty much the whole time. But, hello, Breana.
Sorry, my puppy was crying outside, and I heard her clawing at her cage, so I just let her out.
Your puppy is the cutest. I have to acknowledge that. Oh, this is a comment. Yeah, also like that the Dark Asha are powerful but limited. So we were just talking about sort of the limits that the Dark Asha face, even though they are so powerful.
I like the checks and balances system actually, because I think one of my biggest complaints with YA fantasy is the heroine is always just all they're the best at everything. They're perfect and amazing from the beginning, and then it becomes uninteresting to follow their journey.
Yeah.
So I feel I like that, especially when you find out Lady Makila is dying because of the work that she's doing, and then Taya has to decide. I feel that's probably why Taya goes down the path that she does. And you get to see the anti-heroine side, and the fact that she can't do all the other types of elemental magic makes it more entertaining, as opposed to she was oh, great at the elemental magic, and also she could do all the rest of it. I would have been less intrigued in her story.
I agree.
Mm-hmm. And I think another important aspect of the magic system is that it's very gendered, right? And then we see how, for example, the men, when they have magic, they're good to go, they're powerful, they're out there fighting with the monsters and whatever. But for the Asha, they had to learn they had to learn about art, about performances, about how to speak using flowers, all these sophisticated, very soft things, just because their power alone isn't enough to give them the influence to really make changes in their society. So it's kind of interesting as well how even though they have great power, even the elemental Asha, even they still have to learn other forms of art, other ways to exert influence on other people, just because there's I don't know it's really there's really an imbalance there.
I agree. And that was something that even at the end when Taya is let me go do this thing. I know where it is. I know what I'm doing, and they don't want to let her go because of financial reasons and because they've sent the men, and just getting the men to listen to all the women was such a fight, and that was so frustrating because obviously they're so powerful, but I also really liked that. And this is something that I wish more magic systems that are based on some sort of gendered system would do. I really like that I really like that they really break away from that binary with Link's character, and the fact that they questioned, that whole system that was in place through that character. I really appreciated that, because I think that's something that often in books with systems where it's men do this, women do that, they don't question okay, but what if you're neither, or what if what if you have a different identity, and I really appreciated that discussion sort of starts to happen in this book, and I am so interested to see where that goes in future books.
Oh, hold on. I think we missed a question a while ago. Wait, I think there's one from Tiffany. Oops, I'm so sorry. I missed it. I'm not wearing glasses. I can't see. Okay, so Tiffany asked if this is my favorite out of all of Rin Chupeco's books. And God, so I actually contrary to popular belief, I haven't read all their books. The only one I haven't read is their debut, which is The Girl from the Well. That's just because I don't really read horror, as I am the biggest wuss, but I will eventually. But everything else I've read, I will say that The Bone Witch remains to be my favorite. It's a close tie between The Bone Witch and Wicked As You Wish, just because Wicked As You Wish is more unapologetically, really blatantly Filipino, and it's very timely because it's sort of a contemporary fantasy, so it draws parallels from the real world, such as immigration and stuff. So it is very close to my heart. But I think The Bone Witch is one that I love, just like partly for sentimental reasons and partly because it's the kind of book that, again, like if you read it over and over again, there's something else that you can sort of talk about or notice about it. And I think like that shows just how strong Rin Chupeca's writing is. Like for you to like put so much in like a limited text, I think that's really it tells you so much about their skill as a writer.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I feel like I'm gonna want to go back and reread The Bone Witch after I get to the rest of the series because I just know there's so much that I missed or like that didn't click for me just from a first read, especially because I listened to it on audiobook. I think being able to like go through and like highlight tabs and stuff would have helped a lot. I read the first couple of chapters as an ebook, but listened to the rest in audio, and I think that was maybe a disservice because I feel like I didn't retain the information as well. But the writing,
yeah. I'm a bit curious. This is like your first Rin Chupeca book. It is, right? Like,
yeah,
if I remember correctly. Oh, okay. It's a good first impression, though. Oh yeah, I don't know where Monica went.
Maybe it was her. But one of my favorite quotes was from the beginning part, and it was like when I think Lady Michaela not meets her for the first time, but they're talking about the world of Asha. She's like, you can't make better of the dead, sweet child, though I reckon death can make better of us. When I read that, I was like, this is maybe like one of my favorite quotes that I've read in a YA fantasy recently. Like, I feel like I set the stage for the rest of the book, and it made me super excited to keep reading. And I think that's definitely a strong suit as a writing style.
Yeah, I have like a bunch of Rin Chupeca quotes littered on my Notion setup, like all like the quotes, just because I love. There's really like a lot of passages here that speak to me. I think there's one that goes. Hold on, let me open my Notion so I can quote it correctly.
Sorry, my internet died for a second, so I dropped. But I'm glad to see that even though that happened, that the live didn't end.
We were nervous a little bit.
Sorry.
Okay, hold on. The quote is, "Then perhaps we should carve a world one day where the strength lies in who you are rather than in what they expect you to be." So I think this was the conversation they had about Lick wanting to like not be a death seeker. So that really stayed with me.
Yeah, I really liked the writing in this one. I felt like there were a lot of like just really powerful moments and like lines throughout it. I was saying to Breana earlier that I really wish I had page flagged it because I don't know, I just didn't think about it while I was reading it. And now I'm like, I wish I had done that because I feel like there were some really good moments. But I'll probably end up rereading it, to be honest, because I do want to. I feel like there was so much that happened. I kind of want to like reread it before I continue into the rest of the series.
Is this your first Rin Chupeca book, Monica?
It is, and now I want to read everything by them.
Yeah.
Welcome to the club. Welcome as new Chupec host.
Okay, let me see. We talked about so I guess we could talk a little bit about the ending and where the story ends up going. And what I thought was one of the wildest plot reveals that I've read in a while is the reveal that you get when you find out that she actually brought the bard to her, and that this wasn't him just like seeking her out, that she like sent this vision to him in order to get him to come to her, and then just like the reveal of who she's become at the end, which was like just wild. But yeah, what did you guys think about the ending?
I think for me, that sort of amplified the dissonance that I had between Thea of the past versus Thea like as she was then. So it showed just like this really naive girl who didn't really know what she's doing. Suddenly she's this really what's the word for it? She's really calculating now. It feels like she has like the whole thing planned out, right? You can sort of tell in the italicized chapters that she has like this end game. She has all the steps figured out. She already has this whole master plan, and you're dying to know what is this plan, right? What are the details of this plan? Because like you wanna like you kind of just want to be in the know, like in that circle that knows like what she knows and what she's trying to achieve at the end of the day. Because like there are hints like sprinkled. For example, there was this chapter where he says like the bard asks, so what happens in the end? And then she says, like everything else, it ends with me. And you're kind of wondering what's that mean, right? So I don't know, like there are a lot of I think foreshadowing that you can interpret in multiple ways, and I think that's part of the fun of the book, that you're trying to figure it out. And then I'm very happy to say that the narration, it's like the past present thing, it does like line up, but it's consistent throughout the series, which I really appreciated. And I'm also happy that it didn't feel awkward, because like I feel like it's really difficult to pull off, but in the later books, even though it's something that's hard to do, like it's still like consistently good. It's not awkward anymore. It doesn't become awkward, so very appreciative. Oh, hi.
We have a special guest.
Sorry, she was crying so loud, and I didn't want my neighbors to complain.
Oh my God, do not be sorry. This is wonderful.
She just woke up from her nap, and she had to go pee, so I just took her out really quick.
I 100% agree. I also wanted to pull this up, who she resurrects. That was also, I wasn't sure. I was like, leading up to it, I was like, I think she's gonna resurrect someone, because like she was like leading up to that, and then when it's revealed that it's Kaylin, I'm like, how did we get here?
Oh my God.
Shalea's like, I want to not tell you, but also I want to tell you.
Okay, all I will say about that is that Taya and Kaylin are like the blueprint of enemies to lovers. Okay, that's all I'm gonna say.
So
Because
I love that. I'm like, as soon as I saw that, I was like, oh yeah, I'm hooked. We're in this whole series. I need to know how this happened. I feel like probably even a bigger revelation was the fact that her and her brother like kind of hate each other now, which like I was like, what? we love Fox.
and she was like, my brother would kill me. I was like,
yeah, like what are your thoughts on their dynamic as siblings, right? Because like it starts off with Taya raising him from the dead, but we don't really get a view on how they were before he was resurrected. So like what did you feel about their relationship, and like how close they were? Like did you feel it was organic? Did you feel like you were missing something?
Yeah. I loved them. Like for me, that their relationship was like one of my favorite parts of the book, just because like I thought it was so pure and genuine, and like I loved that it was like steeped in this sort of like history of him basically having a hand in like being so active and like raising her and being that sort of older brother figure, and that she like they just loved each other so fiercely. So like yeah, I think that was one of my favorite relationships in the whole book, was actually just their relationship as brother and sister, which is why the ending I was like why?
I want to know what happened.
I'm here for the tea.
Tell me now. Just making sure my tiny monster isn't destroying my home.
Oh my gosh. Another one. Favorite element. Yeah, I just loved them. What about you guys? Like what did you all think about Taya and Fox?
It was kind of cool because like they're siblings, but I mean like he's her brother, but he's also kind of her bodyguard. You know what I mean? So it's another like sort of spin on that trope of like having a bodyguard figure taking care of you and stuff. Except this time it's the brother doing the protecting. I think that's really cool. Yeah, and I like the naming conventions. It's very, now that I think about it, it's kind of Filipino. Filipino parents have this weird naming thing. Like they name all their, like for us, like in my family, we all have J names. I won't tell you my J name because I don't like it. But my sisters are Gian and Jada, and then my dad and his siblings are all J names as well, just like Jerome, Judith, Jovi, John, blah blah blah. So it's really a thing, and I didn't really pick up on it until again when I found out that Rin is Filipino, and it also sort of like clicked in my head. So there's really like a lot of Easter eggs or a lot of like really like I keep telling you like there's really something you can talk about or find whenever you revisit the text, and I think that's really cool. Yeah.
I want to look more into the Persian mythology inspiration because I'm not familiar at all with Persian mythology, and I heard that's also some of where the world building came from. So
Same.
Too, after all this. Yeah, I'm really excited for the second one to see where their sibling dynamic goes, especially if introduced like that she brought him back and he's her familiar, and then now they have this huge falling out. I was like, I love broken relationships in novels.
Oh, speaking of relationships, what do you think about Zoya and Shadi?
I was just thinking about that. I really appreciated just like how that all developed over time. And like the amount that I ended up liking all these characters again makes me very nervous because Taya references like, oh, they took everyone from me. I'm like, everyone? Really? But yeah, I really liked seeing how those relationships developed because they obviously started off in a not very good place. And then to see them kind of fighting with each other, even though I wouldn't exactly call all of them like besties at the end. Yeah, I'm just like very interested in that dynamic. And the fact that like she is part of this very interesting like community of women where they're like they all call each other like sisters and you know mother and stuff like that. So yeah, I don't know, I'm definitely like excited to see where it goes in future books.
Yeah, I think this book is really like I mean it's kind of, you don't really see, it's not the first thing you notice right away because like the world building is so like immense and expansive, but it's really about relationships if you think about it. Like, you know, what drives Taya is like her love for the people that she's lost. So you can see that that's really what's driving her through like everything basically. And then we see like all these like even like the side characters. What interests me is that Taya has a really deep, not really deep, but not necessarily close, but deep or complicated relationship with every side character there. Even like Miss Parmina, you know, like they have a weird mentorship thing going on. It's weird because like on one hand, Parmina sees her as like an investment, but on the other hand, you can sort of see that she really does care for Taya. So it's very, you know, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Also, I just agreed with this comment. I'm just very interested in Zoya. I find her like she's kind of who some like my favorite character trope is the mean girl who you end up really kind of falling in love with. And so I really like her. And I'm interested to see where her character goes. But I also agree. I feel like a lot of the side characters were just like so unique and fun, and really brought the story to life. Like even I forget his name, but the
Heart Forger.
No, I loved him too. But the guy who made the Hoas, the dressmaker.
Oh, I forgot his name. Wait, I have it here. It's a hard name.
I bear. Yeah. I just I loved all of his scenes. I loved his character, like from the very beginning, the way we were introduced to him, and I could just see if this were ever to be adapted, like those scenes being just some of my favorites, like just so fun and colorful and bright. Also, I love fashion, so I loved all the talk about the dresses. Oh, Raheem, thank you.
Oh, thank you. So bad.
But yeah, I really liked all the side characters. Do we want to talk about the Heart Forgers and that whole part? I just really like that magic system, and I liked the whole idea of them taking memories. So that was really like, I had never seen magic like that before.
Yeah, I think like the idea of a hearts glass is like so fascinating to me because it's basically a world where people are literally wearing their hearts on their sleeves, but except around their neck. So like that idea is like so interesting to me because like there are traditions around that item, such as like when they get the runes, or like trading it with your lover, so that sort of like a sign of your devotion and stuff. But for the bone witches, it's a different story. So there's really like, it's so complex, really. And I think I just kind of want to get into Rin Chupeco's head and figure out where did all of this come from, right? Especially during this time. I mean, I'm pretty sure they've written a lot of books that weren't unfortunately like haven't been published yet or won't ever like see the light of day. But it's interesting, like such a nuanced book or trilogy is like was published during the start of their career, not really like their debut, but like following up to their debut. So you can see like they're already like so talented and so skilled, and you're only excited for like how they're going to continue growing as an author and continue impressing us. I'd really love to see Rin write adult fantasy. I'd really love.
I agree, because like there are parts of this that honestly reminded me a lot more of like adult fantasy that I've read than even like most of the YA that I've read, in a lot of the risks that it takes and how complex it is, and its world building and its relationships and stuff. Like for me, I feel like, and nothing wrong with this, but I feel like for the most part, YA fantasy is like very plot driven, and it's like, you kind of have that 3-act structure, and for the most part, the books tend to stick with that, which is great. I love YA fantasy, so that's not a bad thing. But what I liked is that this book it's not as committed to like, okay, let's take you on this like movie style plot. It's a lot slower at times, sometimes, which frustrated me, but for the most part, I do tend to like slower fantasy, and so I liked that part of it too.
Yeah, I think this was definitely refreshing because I've fallen out of love with YA fantasy a bit recently, but I think what this book really made me excited about was and we talked about it earlier, but like the gender dynamics, the socio-political landscape of it. I think that type of world building made me so much more invested in everything. I think a lot of YA fantasies and why I don't vibe with them as much anymore is because it's plot and romance driven often. And I like that this one, like the main character is an anti-hero, that you get to see this build up to a climax, and it's not a payoff right away, that you get a wealth of side characters, and a lot. I really, really, really like the socio-political landscape of everything. I think the gender interpretation of the magic, which I think makes it so much more interesting to me than having. I mean, not that regular YA fantasy is bad, but like I wanted to read something a little bit different and to read something inspired so much by Filipino folklore, Persian mythology, and all of that was really refreshing, and I think it might get me back into YA fantasy.
I agree.
Yeah, I think another aspect that makes the landscape so interesting is that it also deals a little bit about classism. So when we see, like, because Thea was like raised in like a sort of rural area, right? And then she's taken to the kingdom, and then she sees like the rich being so wasteful with magic, using it to make them enhance themselves, right? Yeah. And then that magic usually comes at a cost, right? Like especially for the bone witches, where it drains their life force if they're not responsible with their magic. It could lead to like harm on themselves. But there are these rich people who are just like using it to satisfy their vanity, and to make themselves. I don't know. It was it was a little bit like the Hunger Games, where you go to the capital and like everyone's like dressed in a ridiculous, extravagant way, except here, like, I don't know, I think it was more interesting because that magic is like, it comes at a cost, basically.
Yeah.
I also thought that was interesting when they were talking about how like rich people can afford to just buy new arts classes. Like they're like, oh, you just collect more, and like rich people can just afford to pay for it, so they're a lot less. I mean, like when Taylor was describing how her parents had traded arts classes, like it was a symbol of their love, and then Michaela's like, some people just buy new ones and it means nothing to them, and like, so I was like, I like the class system of it all. I was surprised just to see how little other people feel about magic.
So we have a few minutes left, so I wanted to just see if there were any final points that you wanted to discuss about the Bone Witch, either anyone in the comments or both of you. For me, I'm very excited for book 2. But yeah.
I'm excited for you to like read book 2 because like I don't know, book 2 is. I mean, I think it works better for people who are looking more of plot, and since the foundation's already been like established in the first book, like it's a little bit more linear-ish now in the second book, and the pacing is a bit faster because but what's nice about it is that you're going to see more of the 8 kingdoms, so watch out for that. Like that's like amazing, and obviously more relationships. So I don't know, like the second book is probably my favorite one out of the whole trilogy, just because like there's a particular relationship that gets a lot of airtime, and I'm just like, yes, this is what I want, this is what I love. So yeah.
Breana, any final thoughts or?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the sequel as well, because I remember finishing the audiobook and being like, that's it. I'm really looking forward. I'm hoping to have the bookstores near me open back up so I can go pick up the second one, because I need to read it physically this time and have a physical copy so I can like annotate it, because I think that's what's really going to help understand this and remember it, because I'm very excited for it.
Yeah, it's definitely a book I feel like that commands it demands your attention. But yeah, I'm so glad we got to read this one for Magical Girl Society, and then we got to discuss it with you all today. Also, thank you again, Shealea, for joining us. Such an honor to have you.
Thank you for inviting me. I was like, when Breana was like, hey, I know you're busy, but can you do this? And I was like, listen, I will make time. Like, we will make this happen. I just love talking about this trilogy so much. Yes.
Yeah, I'm so glad, especially, knowing that this is your favorite book and getting to just talk with you about that was awesome. All right, well, I guess that is everything. Reminder that November's book is Nevermore, the first book in the Nevermore series. The third book just came out. I have it. I just got it. It's one of my favorite books of all time, so I'm really excited to talk to everyone about it and to reread it. But yeah, thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you, Breana and Shealea. Yeah, hope you guys have a great rest of your night and have a good rest of your day.
Yeah.
Good morning.